up, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of How to Get Away with the JD. And this time I have a special guest with me. We've been trying to get and connect to get on the podcast for a minute now. Season 1 didn't happen, so I'm glad I can get him in on the later half of season 2. It's my boy, Chris. Today we're going to be talking to you guys a little bit about JD Advantage and like those jobs and what that means exactly, because a lot of people actually don't know that some people do go to law school not to go practice the law in order to find other jobs. And when Chris told me that, I was like, oh, well, okay. Well, today I got Chris with me. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, tell us a little bit about him, and then we are going to get started. So what's up, Chris?
What's up, everyone? My name's Chris. So I think a great place to start is JD Advantage. What is it? Why do it? Well, so typically people go to law school to become a lawyer, right? And they're pursuing that legal education to go work at big law, small law firm, maybe prosecutor, public interest, whatever it might be. What a lot of people don't realize is the value of a JD stretches so much further than simply, I'm going to be a lawyer. For me personally, for example, it's gotten me into an MBA program at William & Mary, just because they viewed law school as, oh my gosh, wow, it's this big thing and you're so accomplished and all these other things. So, whether that's true or not, it's certainly like really valuable. It's something that I'm sincerely passionate about. And I think it brings a lot of value for a ton of people out there that are looking to pursue a JD without necessarily, taking the bar, or if they do take the bar, go inactive.
Yeah. So when Chris told me that this was like his life path and what he wanted to do, I was like, that's crazy. Like, what people actually do that? Because again, first generation lawyer, you don't really know that much about like the whole ins and outs, ebbs and flows of what you can do with the JD. So Chris, you talked a little bit about it, but starting from the beginning of your journey to get to law school and to like where you are now with your MBA. Yes, y'all, Chris left me here. We were supposed to graduate together, but he left to go start this MBA. So it is what it is. But did you always know that it was going to be JD for you and then a job using that JD, or was that something that you stumbled along? How did that work out for you?
So I want to say, well, I knew since high school I wanted to get into a JD program. I knew I wanted in some capacity to get a legal education. When I got to undergrad, I through all these events, I had the opportunity to participate in a National Science Foundation program. During this time, I was the pre-law vice president, and then a year after, the president of pre-law. So the legal education was kind of the thing. It was the thing I knew I wanted to do. But in the back burner, what was happening was I was building a business with a bunch of engineering professors at the university. So we competed for a bunch of government grants. And I think I've always had an inclination to follow business or follow some kind of, pursue an advantage to my JD without necessarily being a lawyer. So it just kind of worked out for me. I knew I wanted to get my MBA. I didn't know it would happen this early. Then COVID happened, and I just thought, why not? I can do a lot of my JD classes online, and I have pursued some of those at Mizzou Law online while also pursuing this great opportunity to get an MBA. So, I would say for me, it was really clear cut kind of the direction I wanted to go, but not everyone's journey looks like that. Some people may have different journeys. They may figure it out in the middle of law school. And, I promise like a legal education is still very much worth it. Even if you're not going to go be a lawyer, it is such an employable degree. People love it. I think there's a stature that comes with it, rightfully so or not. Right. That's just a little bit about my journey, but certainly not everyone's journey looks the same.
Exactly. And I think that's something that you mentioned is interesting, especially like with COVID, you being able to do like your law classes and then the MBA classes. But then even with COVID being the way that it is and how it's going to affect the job market for at least the next 2 to 5 years for law students in particular, thinking about like JD Advantage jobs, I think there is a quote unquote advantage to taking some of those straight out of law school, especially now, because even though you can't get necessarily like the legal experience, right, doing certain things like a law firm or something, there are many jobs that still relate to the law where you don't necessarily have to take the bar and practice. Like you can do compliance work, you can still do contract work, those different reviewing jobs like that. So even in today's job market, or like what the job market looks like post-COVID and as the world's getting their bearings, back together, having like those ideas in your pocket of like, okay, well, maybe I can't do this like right out of law school. Maybe I can look to this. I think that's something that a lot of people probably haven't thought about, but probably might want to put on their back burner, you know.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. I think, I mean, just me personally, kind of the inside looking in and then the outside looking in, because you know, I'm obviously not traditional in the sense I'm going to go be a lawyer, or I mean, you never know, but at this point, probably not. I think I'm good. I think I'll leave that to you, Faye. That's all you.
I don't want it.
But I think, you know, one thing the legal industry is going to have to overcome at some point, particularly because of COVID and pre-COVID too, is the implementation of technology. The legal field is very traditional. And so because how traditional it is, it's been less willing to adopt new technology. So for example, like AI implementation or other things too, to make a lawyer's job easier. And yeah, there are a variety of reasons of that. We can talk about billable hours and whatever, but that's not the purpose of this. Yeah. But the point is just that the legal market is, you know, I think it's going to look different within the next 10 years. And so when you're pursuing a JD, there are so many other opportunities related to, okay, well, I have a JD. That means I might be a quote unquote expert in this field, or people may view me as such in this particular industry. So an example of that is like contract negotiation, right? People view contract negotiators primarily as lawyers, like when you're getting to the nitty gritty of details. So like one actual piece of employment at a university level is actually doing just that. You're negotiating contracts for IP that the university may have, just an example. And there's a multitude of like jobs that are available just to do that very one thing. So I think it's the education that makes it valuable. And I think is going to continue becoming more valuable as we go further into what life looks like after COVID and as technology continues being implemented into the legal industry.
Yeah, Chris has a really fond love of tech that we're going to get into, because I think that's kind of like how
Yeah.
this JD Advantage life of his is going to be shaped.
Yeah.
But something he also just brought up is like that realm of higher education, especially like looking at some jobs in higher ed. There's a lot of people who have JDs and they're just not practicing or not practicing anymore. And I'm not even talking about like professors in law schools and different things like that, but like even on the administrative level, presidents, chancellors, you of course like the diversity and inclusion positions, which a lot of people are starting to now implement. They have a lot of people in those roles with like JDs who aren't necessarily practicing, but it's a really good stepping stone to have that, because you understand, ideally, you understand a little bit more about like what those roles entail. So I think Chris brings up a good point, but I want to talk about Chris's adventure with technology and how he plans to use said JD. He mentioned earlier that like how he had got into with a lot of work with like his professors and engineers and doing a business. So Chris had told me a little bit about his business early on in our law school career. So one, I want you to update the people on like how the business is going, but then two, how do you plan to use your JD and your MBA at this point to, you know, further yourself once you finish both degrees?
Yeah. So, you know, full disclosure, I'm very biased towards technology. I am not the person you want me up giving a speech about, you know, some kind of technology summit where we're going to be actually fair in that discussion. I am not that person. I think technology is going to take over the world, robots and all. So
I agree. And I've been very nice to all my Siris and Googles and all that other stuff because I need them to love me.
Oh, same here, dude. I have one Alexa in the living room, one in the bathroom, one in the room. So I'm not playing these games. But yeah, so to answer your question, an update on kind of where I'm at right now, what I've been doing. So, and part of the reason why I went to go pursue my MBA is because I needed a little bit more flexibility with my time. Since COVID hit, there's been opportunities with the team I work with to implement some more rapid testing. So we're still waiting to hear back on grants for that. But more specifically, I mean, just it was taking up a lot of time. There's a lot of contract negotiation, bringing it back to law school. There was a lot of NDAs, which are non-disclosure agreements, bringing it also back to law school. So, you know, to also answer the second question, currently that's how I'm using it, right? I don't even have the full JD right now. I should be getting that as the semester after you all graduate. But I know it's sad. But I'm using it now. Like, so whether it's negotiating an NDA and understanding, okay, what is personal jurisdiction? Like things related to that, or what's venue? How does that work?
It sounds like a lot of Civ Pro, and I'm not.
Right. Right. Yeah. And low key, not very fond of Civ Pro, but that's okay. That's another story. But there's so many aspects to what I do to date that relate to the law. So, and it particularly for my space, it looks good for you to have a graduate degree or pursuing a graduate degree, because I'm working with engineers that have 2 doctorates in like optical engineering and mechanical engineering. And there is so much to keep up with and so much to learn. And, you have to be able to fend for yourself. You have to have some kind of subject matter expertise to a degree. Not to say I'm an expert or anything, because I'm not. But that doesn't mean other people don't need to know that. So that's kind of where I'm at with everything.
Love it, love it, love it. I mean, like when Chris takes over the world, I hope he hires me one day, y'all. That's where I'm at in life personally. But something that I found interesting when like researching the topic for JD advantages is like the percentage of people who actually take JD advantage jobs out of law school, right? So a university in Texas had partnered with the study for the NLAP, and they had said that the percentage of JD advantage jobs taken by new law school graduates almost doubled during the 10-year period between 2006 and 2016, increasing from 8.8% of jobs in 2006 to 16.9%. But since 2016, it has dropped down to about 13.9% in around 2018. But of course, that was pre-pandemic. And if we all know like what 2006 through 2016 looked like, the legal field went through another ebbs and flows, which is why some of those positions shaped the way they did. So I think bringing back to like the whole idea of like what to do with the degree, and like when people go into law school, you hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to practice, right? And a lot of law schools always push the idea of like, oh, you want to do like big law, or oh, maybe like public interest. And for some reason, this pocket of jobs is always skipped over for some reason. So Chris, for you, what is your perspective in terms of like that rise from 16.9 to then 13, and then how you think that some schools should be targeting more of these JD advantage jobs to their students?
Yeah, I think this is why, in my opinion, I think is important when you enter law school to understand how the game works, right? And the game's going to look different for different people depending on the kind of practice you want to go into, but generally having an idea. So, I don't know if it benefits, for example, the ABA to say, hey, like, there's a JD advantage. You can go and pursue these sorts of jobs, because I think it lowers the notoriety of the legal market. And it becomes less competitive in that way. So I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing for the ABA. I just happen to think it's a great thing for students. It's a great thing for law students. It's a great thing for those that have a JD. So my perspective is know the legal industry, right? Know what the game is. The game, primarily from my perspective, is a billable hour game. So the more hours you bill, the more value you bring to a firm. That makes sense because your salary is a fixed expense. So because your salary is a fixed expense, they're hoping that their investment on you is going to equal ×3 or whatever the multiplier is on your salary. They want to make sure that you're going to bring in more money for them. So in part, that's why I think law firms, not to disrespect any law firms, but like I just think it's like actually happening. Like law firms are incentivized to make sure that they go a little extra slower for their clients, right? That's more hours they're able to bill. So, I think as that slowly begins to change, and I think eventually they will have to, particularly, as a lover of technology, as technology gets implemented, it's going to have to change. So will the ABA, do a better job? Will law schools do a better job of, showing, hey, like, you don't need to have this traditional legal job. There is this opportunity working for Amazon, working for Cisco, working for a big company that value the degree. You know what I mean? Like you
Mm-hmm.
can actually get a job that a lot of MBA students would get after graduating with a JD because they view it as equivalent, if not better. So I think knowing that and having that internally when you're looking for a job, and you don't have to know, but that is another route you can go. That's another tunnel that you can go into that isn't necessarily just like, I'm a lawyer.
Love that. So to your point then, since a lot of schools really don't, and the ABA definitely doesn't, like push, oh yeah, like these are some other opportunities out there. What do you feel are some resources that students should take advantage of or probably could take advantage of from your experience at least, to like really get an idea of like, okay, maybe this could work for me, or maybe this might be better suited for me? Because I was having a conversation maybe 2 days ago with a prospective law student, and they were asking me about like they're creative, right? They enjoy the aspect of creative and they want to do like entertainment law or like something like that. But then they were like, but I was looking at like these other jobs, but they don't require a JD. But I don't know. And I was telling them like, I mean, having the JD in and of itself,
Yeah.
perfect. Like you can do a lot. Like this degree is very malleable, but then to do what you want to do, I mean, like I will never tell somebody not to go pursue their passion, but like get the JD. And then if you want to take like that other job doing like A&R work or like something like that. I forgot exactly what they wanted to do. And then like find your way into, because entertainment law in and of itself is hard. So like finding one way in the door and then circling in to do the rest, it just depends. But that's not a resource people talk about. So in your experience, what are some resources or things that students should start to think about and look for if they may have to consider other alternatives?
So I would say, like what you would consider maybe more traditional resources. So LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is big. Law students that are able to utilize their LinkedIn better and, show that they have some kind of network, I think better positions them for more JD advantage type jobs, which makes a lot of sense. So for any law students out there, if you haven't, I know this is for pre-law students too, but specifically for law students, please make a LinkedIn, make one, just because you never know. And to the LinkedIn point too, real quick, make sure you develop a brand identity. Like that's really important when you're marketing yourself. People have to have an idea of who you are, of what you are, and what you represent. And I think that'll help you get jobs in the future as well if you don't want to go the traditional legal route. So number one, LinkedIn. Number two, I think, honestly, not to dodge the question, but I really do believe like Google Jobs and Indeed, like those are available. And then also networking. I mean, that is a huge thing. I think law school places some emphasis on networking. I do think it could do a little bit of a better job. But that's really important, right? The more people you're able to meet, the better positioned you are to go get a job. So, let's say pre-law student wants to go to law school, is in love with Amazon, right? Go meet people at Amazon. People love talking about themselves. So go meet them, offer to pay for their coffee, and sit down with them just to get an idea of who they are, why they're pursuing what they're pursuing, and just kind of drop, you know what I mean? Like that little nugget out there. And you never know what will happen. So I would just say, again, like LinkedIn, traditional job boards, and then also go network. So yeah, I know that's hard with law school. We're always stuck inside studying all that, but find time to do that.
100% agree with the LinkedIn thing. Like, I'm surprised at the amount of people who either don't have LinkedIn, just getting started on LinkedIn. I'm just like, that's crazy. This tool is like, and LinkedIn has gone through its things in the past, but like, I think LinkedIn now with premium accounts, like the free trial, some of the quizzes and things that you can do to get certified and have badges. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, badges on profiles, I guess, actually means a lot to certain employers as they're looking for things. So if you guys take like the little free quizzes to get certified, have your little certificate in certain things, that'll set you apart in the job market. LinkedIn, of course, always posts jobs and things. So like turning on your alerts for certain jobs like compliance, contracts, or like anything in the tech field, like, or certain like Amazon, like you can actually set notifications to show when somebody is hiring for something, and then just sort through and see, okay, maybe I can do that, or like maybe not. And then highlighting the fact that networking is important. I sat on a networking panel the other day with a good friend of mine, Yoshi. For those of you who watched last season, he was on here, the law school mentor. And I was talking to some 3Ls, 2Ls, and then a lot of pre-law students. And it was just like the fact that there's some things that people just don't know that you can just Google search. Like, JD Advantage jobs. You can literally Google search it. You'll find like questions, articles, different things like that. Hell, you can do that for like certain things that you want out of law school. Like, what does a law school offer? Like, there's so much knowledge just on the internet in and of itself. And then
Yeah.
as you start to do research and you find something, you got a question about it, that's just a great way to like write something down and then either ask a friend, or if they're touring schools, like ask a school, like, okay, so how do you guys help students with jobs? Because that's not something I don't think I thought about when I was going through. I just figured like
Yeah.
everybody gets a job, right? But I never knew where, I didn't know what. So like having the opportunity to understand there's pockets for these things, I think will take students a little bit further than what I was in the beginning.
Yeah, oh, you and me both. I actually want to add two things to what you said. For those that are minorities, people of color, there are also a bunch of diversity and inclusion pipeline programs available out there. I don't have a list in front of me, but Faye, I can send it to you if you just want to put it out there. Those are really valuable because they are very useful resources in helping you get ready and get your resume ready for those jobs that maybe require like some kind of JD Advantage, or you can utilize your Juris Doctorate degree in some capacity. Another thing I want to mention too is content creation. Okay, we are in 2020, about to hit 2021, right? You have to create content. I don't care what your job is. You can be a lawyer or you can work for some company. Creating content makes you more marketable. So you have to be able to create content, thinking about that brand identity as well in the process. So if you're like me, you love technology implementation, all that good stuff. Well, the first thing I think about is, okay, what does it take to build technology? It takes a team. I put out a LinkedIn article, I want to say maybe a couple weeks ago, involving like what it takes to create a team. The reason why I did that in part is because I'm trying to build up my brand reputation and image. I want people to see that Chris cares about this particular subject. He has some experience doing this. And even if I didn't have it, and by the way, even if I don't think I do have experience like building teams, we all have experience doing that. We all went to undergrad and we're all, if we want to pursue a JD, you can pursue that and then you'll have some experience working with teams there. Yeah, I would just say get into the content creation game, start a podcast, write an article. That's what I'm saying, right? I mean, like, why not? Here we are. I think it just makes you look better in the long run. And to be honest with you, it's the future. So why not?
I 100% agree. And something that Chris said that I think is really important that people, I think, emphasize when it comes to like journals and things, but don't really emphasize in like other realms outside of that is credibility.
Yep.
And to Chris's point, like when you're publishing these things, when you're writing these things, you're starting to build your credibility in the field. It doesn't matter if like 3 people read it or whatever. The more you start to publish and find your niche and start to do things, the more credibility you gain in an industry. And the more credibility that you have, the more opportunities that open up for you and other things of that nature. So even again, to Chris's earlier point about like keeping an open mind, having this wide array of things that a JD can do. Chris wants to do tech. So a lot of the things that he'll eventually publish, keep publishing, doing, will have that sphere to it, which creates his credibility. So as he goes and pops through jobs, becomes CEO of all these other different places, he has a trail of credibility because these are the things that he's written on. So even if you guys start a podcast, start writing articles and things, just keep that in mind. It's always about building your credibility. And the longer you can build your credibility, the more people that can read your stuff, co-sign, maybe start a debate. Like that's the point. You don't always have to be right. We all know something. It's just getting the opportunity to put what we know out there and creating a conversational space.
Yeah. And on top of that too, I think, look, I mean, I'm wrong a lot. So I have no clue. Right. I have no clue if what I'm writing makes sense at all. People can disagree with it. That's okay. I think it's more so inviting the conversation. And then one last point just on the content creation stuff. I would say also don't be discouraged by maybe having those 3 views. I think a lot of people struggle with that. It's actually a big problem also. I know this isn't really JD Advantage related, but it's also, I think, a big problem that people struggle with going into law school and in law school is perception. So I know it's hard, like me saying don't worry about perception, and you may still worry about it. But for those listeners out there, like do not worry about perception. it's okay to stay in your lane, do your thing. People will support it. Keep putting out content if that's what you want to do. And I suggest probably doing it. And just like, why not? You never know what will happen a year from now, 2 years from now. Maybe you start a great podcast like what Faye's doing, and you get sponsors and all this other stuff. And maybe he has me doing the legal work in the future for him. Who knows? Like, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you got to pay me well though.
Well, we can arrange it. Something can work out.
Cool. Okay.
By then, State Farm might be paying you. Who knows? Who knows?
Right, but I just think like don't be discouraged. It's okay to stay in your lane and just be focused on what makes you happy and what brings out your passions. And I would say create content based off of that and what you think your future looks like.
All right, guys. So we're going to take a quick break for ads and sponsorship because like Chris said, I have some bills to pay. And then we will be right back. And I'm going to ask Chris a couple of more questions before we close out. So see y'all soon. All right. And we're back. So just to dive a little bit more, because I know you guys are probably like, all right, so content creation and all these other things, there's this other world outside of traditional legal jobs that I can have, right? A lot of information being thrown at you guys in the first half of this episode. So I want to bring it back to Chris personally. In terms of like JD Advantage, pursuing what you want to do later on, what is the dream job for you after it's all said and done? And how do you feel you've set yourself up so far to get there? And what ways do you feel like you might have to continue to do a little bit more?
Yeah, so I think at the end of this journey for me, what it looks like is I'm advising multiple startups. So particularly technology startups and engineering startups. And in addition to that, hopefully being a professor at some university. In part, that's also why I went to go pursue the MBA, right? That's why I went to go pursue the MBA as well. The ways I feel like I set myself up for that is, of course, just the JD education. There's so many things I learned about myself, which is also another important piece of, I think, education in general, especially going through a JD program. The reality is that it's competitive, even at a place like Mizzou, right? That's like Midwestern, small town kind of vibes. There are people that are still very competitive.
Tell me about it.
Right. People that probably may not invite you to the study group. That happens. Not calling any names or saying the class. You know who you are if you're watching this. That was wrong. I would say definitely the legal education, just because I learned what a contract was, right? Something as simple as that. I learned how to read into things and be more detailed oriented. A legal degree, a legal education is very, very detailed. So just taking that detailed mindset and applying it to what I do currently, and hopefully to the future, I think is one way that I've positioned myself to really get to whatever my end goal is. Now, what else I need to learn? There's a bunch of stuff. I think firstly, with the JD, I think continuing to learn more about not necessarily the law, but continuing how to think like a lawyer, right? There are so many positive aspects of thinking like a lawyer, being detail oriented, reading in between the lines, listening to what someone is saying. Those are just important skill sets. I know this sounds very like elementary, but most people are not great listeners, in my opinion. So as a lawyer, you have to be a great listener. You have to engage in active listening and be able to understand facts in a way in which you're able to piece together different facts as well as they come into it. So I do think I need to personally get better at that as I continue transitioning forward in my career. And my gosh, I can keep going forever on what are the things I need to improve on. But I mean, the reality here is that there's a lot of value in the JD. And just like with any educational program, it's a continuous thing. You're always learning. And by the way, there are some pitfalls too to the JD, right? Sometimes I think because the legal industry is closed-minded, sometimes we can be a little closed-minded sometimes. So understanding what those pitfalls are, the legal kind of sector in and of itself is not very diverse. With my field, you work with diversity. Diversity is a good thing, and it's a great thing in the legal field too. So hopefully they improve that. I hope that answers that question.
I think you did very well on answering that question. In fact, actually, But I think something that you brought up that I kind of want to like touch on a little bit in terms of the legal experience. Chris said he wanted to do like startups in a specific sector. And I think one thing for students, this is pre-law students, but then also law students to consider are like clinical experiences on your campus, depending on what they do and don't have. Mizzou, we're fortunate enough to have an entrepreneurship clinic. Now, there are ebbs and flows with the clinic as well. You're not going to get experience in everything, but at least when I did it this past semester, I learned about like, operating agreements, buy-sell agreements. I learned about certain patent issues, what to look for. So I got a little bit of the core concepts of business startups and like how to help a little bit. But I wanted more. And, being in a class limited of a semester, you can only do so much. But I think having the ability to at least get your feet wet in something allows you to then take it a little bit further. So to Chris's point, when he was talking about like things that he wants to do and like how he feels like he set himself up, some things I think for anybody listening to consider and setting yourself up for your future is like, what does your school offer? What are you doing to take advantage and like put yourself out there into those prospective areas? Because you'd be very surprised on some of the people that you meet when doing things like that outside of like the traditional sit in the classroom for like an hour and a half or whatever, and listen to somebody lecture or having a conversation. You're actually doing it, making real life connections with real life businesses that can take you a little bit further later on. So to lob that piece of.
And then just to dunk it real quick, the alumni. That's what I'm saying. LeBron out here, but
yes,
the alumni. Look at the alumni. Look at who the alumni are, because that'll give you some idea as to what people are doing from that specific law school. Mizzou does a great job with public interest, but I forgot the gentleman's name. But they have someone specifically that has like a test prep company. It's a fairly big test prep company, and he's came to speak at Mizzou a couple of times. So just look at the alumni and reach out. Use all the resources available to you. The law school is there to help you. I know traditionally they don't, they're not necessarily made for the JD advantage, right? But they do have tools in place that you personally can utilize to then say, okay, well, I want to connect with this person, get me in contact. And it looks great for the law school and they want to be helpful, so they'll help you. And then for you, I think it allows people an opportunity to really explore different spaces. So that's one of the things I wish I did more. I'm coming up into like, kind of 3L-ish, but yeah, I wish I would have done that my 1L year when I was there.
Huh. That's a good point. I didn't even think about I keep forgetting that alumni exist, right? Or whatever. But it also goes back to your point about LinkedIn. When you find these alumni, email that, like hit them up on LinkedIn. Like when I didn't have a job, well, before I got my job offer, and I'm over here freaking out, like, all right, what am I gonna do? I had CDO send me a list of alumni in Illinois, and I forgot the other state. And I was going on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure they saw like so-and-so viewed your profile. Like, who the hell is this? But I'm going on LinkedIn.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do.
And I'm like, oh, so that sounds interesting. Add, hi, my name is so-and-so. Jennifer from the Career Development Office sent me your information. I just want to know if you had like a minute to chat or whatever. Like putting yourself out there, I think is uncomfortable in a sense. And I know I've said this in like a prior episode. It's uncomfortable to put yourself out there. It's uncomfortable to really force yourself out of your comfort zone to like meet people that you don't know, but you don't know who can put you in different places. And that's kind of the whole point. Like, I think that's the whole point, networking in a sense. So to me, that
no. And I think when I remember when I got accepted into the law schools that I got accepted into, it's a feeling of like elation, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to do this. I made it, et cetera, because it's capped with the LSAT and all this other stuff. Yeah. Not necessarily a fan, but that's another story.
Same.
Right. But I think that, if you get into law school, no matter what the law school is, you're proven already. You're smart enough to do it, right? You have like the intelligence, you have the capability. Sometimes though, I think in life, it's not necessarily just if you're capable, it's also, can you walk further than someone else? Can you move forward? Can you go the long distance where someone maybe just go to like a midpoint or whatever the case might be? And so for me, I never pretended personally to be like the smartest person in the room, right? But I know when I went to Mizzou Law, I was in the same room as the people that were that may have been smarter than me, and I got to the same place they did. So, you know, I was enough, and that's important. Like, you're enough. You don't have to offer something to someone. People love speaking about themselves. I know I hit on that point, but that's really, really important. People love talking about themselves. People love giving information to other people, especially when you're talking about alumni. They want to be helpful. They want to be useful. So I would say utilize that resource. Don't be afraid. Keep going. Do it. You can do it.
100% agree with everything he said. Especially lawyers, you all will find they love to talk about themselves. Like, it's just like mouth diarrhea. You ask them one question, 5 hours later, you're like, I don't even remember the question I asked you. So make sure you ask questions. I promise you the conversation will go far, even if it's unintentional.
Right. It's so funny. Sometimes I think about like, maybe I should be a lawyer because I do talk a lot. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Maybe I'm pursuing the wrong thing. Who knows?
Well, I mean, at least once you get your JD, you can always come to the dark side at some point if you ever just want to, hop on over, take the bar, suffer for, X amount of months to take it.
Yeah.
It's up to you. We'll welcome you.
Also, sorry, I'm going to close these blinds because I got this incredible selfie picture right here that it's not.
I think it's doing well for you, but I get it. I do what you got to do. You look good.
I appreciate that. My bad. Sorry about that.
Now that you don't have to worry about the JD for the most part, your skin's doing great. Your hair is just glowing. Like, you don't look stressed out. Like, look at you.
I appreciate that. Law school has made me realize that my health's important. So, lost weight, did the hair. No more pimples. It's a good vibe right now.
I kind of wish I had that vibe right now. The Zoom touch up is saving me right now. For those actually watching and for those listening, don't worry about it. Don't watch the YouTube video. Just keep listening to my voice. Don't do too much. All right. But Chris, before we get out of here, and I know we've offered a lot of information, a lot of advice, probably opened up some people's eyes to what the hell a JD advantage is. This might be some people's first time, like, I've never heard of that before.
Right.
So I'm going to do something a little different. I normally ask people about what piece of advice they would give to pre-law students and law students, from their perspective. But for you, I want to ask, I'm going to keep that same core concept, but I want to ask you, based on what you're doing now with your JD and your MBA. Can't wait. I know somebody with a dual degree. He's going to do great things and hire me one day. But based off what you're doing with those things now, what would be your piece of advice for somebody, a pre-law student, thinking about going to law school and doesn't know what they want to do? And then for a current law student who might be discouraged because, like I said, the job market looks a little different now. Interviews look a lot different now. What would be your piece of advice for them in terms of pursuing a career in the legal field or even outside of it?
For those that don't know what they want to do, for those in law school or not in law school yet and plan to pursue a legal education or thinking about it, I would say put yourself in as many positions as possible to have experiences, right? I'm a big experience person. I won't know if I don't like being a lawyer unless I go shadow a lawyer, right? And it gets complicated because there's corporate lawyers, there's family lawyers, there's the field's so big. So I would say get into more shadowing opportunities. And then I also think too, it's an introspection thing, right? Like self-reflecting on what makes you happy. I'm also a big, happy, kind and passionate person. Like I'm big on those things. So I appreciate that. I try I think chasing your passions and figuring what those passions are can give you some insight as to what kind of lawyer you want to be, or if you want to pursue a JD Advantage, or if you want to do something else. I think JD Advantage is it's the closest thing that people see in terms of how can you get employed? But there are other opportunities that exist outside of maybe business, which is more traditional for the JD Advantage. There are other opportunities. Go pursue them. Go find out more about you. for law students, and I guess that answers the law students as well. But my biggest piece of advice to law students is, if you're not doing it, do it now. Again, is the big content creation. If you don't know what content to create because you don't know what you want to do, like, there's no rush, but go figure that out. I know that's not like very clear-cut advice, but go do it. Like, go, whatever that is. If you are interested in, I don't know if it exists, farm law, it's probably agriculture law, agriculture law, whatever it is. I'm not doing it. I'm not grazing the cows if that's what you do. But if that's what you're into, go find someone. Go just shadow under that person, see what they're about. I think, law school, for me personally, and I don't know if you can agree with this, Faye, but when you're in the middle of law school, it can beat you down sometimes. There's, I remember when I first started at Mizzou. I feel that. Look. This hairline's gone. It's gone. It does not exist anymore. I remember when I first started at Mizzou, one of the best pieces of advice I got, and it really wasn't advice, it was just like a precursor to what's going to happen. I was just like, make sure you have mental health days, because you will cry one time. I don't care if you're a crier or not. You will break down. I broke down too many times. Too many times. So, not to scare people away from law school, but just
the reality.
It is what it is, right? I would just say part of, I think, the mental health is doing things that you're passionate about, whether it's, meditation or whatever the case might be, and finding out what those passions are. That's my biggest piece of advice. I think the world will open up after that.
And I have to agree with Chris on that last point, because somebody had literally asked me this question the other day, and I never thought about it like this. And now that you say it, it's really funny. I started this podcast into a year because I was sick and tired of law school, and I needed an outlet. I needed to put energy somewhere else. So that's how to Get It with the JD got born. So definitely, law school is hard, y'all. And I say this in every episode, law school is hard. So find something that keeps you, passively happy for however long that can be, and pursue it. Do what you have to do.
And also, not to take over the podcast, but one more thing. This is really, really important. What I've noticed in law school a bunch, and I think this is relevant for people that aren't in law school, is learn to clap for other people. Learn to be happy for other people. This is relevant to the JD advantage too. This is relevant to everything you do in life. If you learn to clap for other people, you will be better positioned for opportunities in the future, because no one likes when people are personally ugly. I will always remember the few people that are just I don't think he belongs in the study session. I'm just like, word, okay, see you 10 years from now where you may not belong in my session. It just is what it is, right? Kindness is important. And I think having that kind of narrow focus also will allow you to be excited about whatever your path is. I think sometimes we like to look to our left or to our right, or look around us, and we get envious sometimes of oh my gosh, this person's doing this and that. Why am I not doing that? Everyone's journey is different, totally different.
Mic drop. All right,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'll drop my PS5 remote, but I'm not going to do that.
Okay, you didn't have to rub that in my face. Mine hasn't come yet. Why? You know what? It's fine. It's fine. Hey, on that note,
clap for me. Clap for me.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Touche. Thanks. I want to thank Chris for coming on to the podcast this week and hanging out with us to talk a little bit about JD Advantage. As always, guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you are on YouTube. Or if you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure you rate and comment. And make sure you guys stay tuned for more episodes of How to Get It with the JD. We will see you in the new year, which is hopefully better than this year. Peace.
Peace.